You're listening to The Lyndia Grant Show. Think on these things with Lyndia Grant.
Well, good evening, Radio 1 listeners. Thank you for tuning in to The Lyndia Grant Show, right here on Radio 1 Spirit 1340 WICB, the oldest gospel station in the United States, founded more than 40 years ago. Today is Friday, May 14th, 2024, and we're celebrating with our Memorial Day weekend show a couple of weeks early this time. We had a booking on the week of Memorial Day, so we wanted to get Dr. Smith in before, not after, so he could invite you down to celebrate at the African American Civil War Memorial on U Street Northwest, where we honor the 209,145 U.S. colored troops, now in the Guinness Book of Records as the monument with the most names. Let's go to Dr. Julianne Malvo, the President Emeritus of Bennett College. She has her PhD in economics, and she's the president of Rainbow Push Excel, dealing with our youth and scholarships and all the exciting stuff. She loved working with young people. Hello to you, Dr. J. How are you today? Talk to us about politics, which is heavy right now.
Well, Lydia, it's great. I'm great. And thank you for doing this show on the Civil War Memorial. People forget that Black people fought. Many of us lost our lives.
Yes.
It's a really compelling story. Many enslaved people left enslavement to come and fight for their freedom. And so thank you and kudos to Brother Smith for the work that he continues to do. Now, it is just cray to the cray around here, especially in terms of international news. Paul Krugman just wrote a column for the New York Times in which he talked about the coming economic war with China. China is doing things that directly compete with the United States in manufacturing. Biden says he isn't having it, but we can't fight on so many fronts as we have. So we need to look at what's happening with China. And if you're buying stuff that's made in China, think about it. Most of the stuff is cheap. It's going to fall apart in a year. Now, that's what you want, go for it. But basically, we have good manufacturers here, and we need to pay attention to manufacturing that happens here in the United States. As I said, so many fronts. Tony Blinken went to Ukraine. He went on Tuesday, and he, of course, is reassuring Zelensky that we will continue to support them. We will, up to a point. I think that right now, the catawampus in the Republican Party saves Ukraine, but if the election in November goes in a different way, our aid to Ukraine may be stopped if Biden is not reelected. So that's important to note. And then in the Middle East, Netanyahu has troops really poised to go into Rafah, which is an area where lots of Palestinians live. It's a very unstable situation, Lyndia, because essentially, first, the Israeli Defense Force told people to go to Rafah. But when they got there, they said, leave Rafah. And this is what they've been doing with people, treating them like a ping pong ball. Go here, leave, go there, leave. I don't know how many moves people have had to endure. There was an elderly man, he said he was 80 on the news, and he said he had moved 3 times. He just wasn't moving anymore. He said, if they kill me, they'll kill me. That's a hard place to be in. Well, that's where we are with this Middle Eastern stuff. President Biden says he won't give Israel any more aggressive weapons if they invade Rafah. I think that while he's right, he's also wrong. He needs to demand, he has the power to demand a ceasefire. What if Israel just got no more weapons at all? Now, some of my Jewish friends who are very anti-Netanyahu are also very pro Israel's right to exist. And their thing is, well, what can we do about Hamas? But I'll just put it out there. What can we do about Hamas if we put it in historical context? In other words, their land was taken from them. They're pushed against the wall. What they did on October 7th was absolutely wrong, but there are a series of wrongs that they've endured as well. I count on smarter people than me to come up with a solution, but certainly the solution is not bombing the spit out of Gaza, continuing to bomb Gaza, killing now, I think they're saying 17,000 children. this is just excessive. We say we believe that children are the future. What about Gazan children? Now, the other thing we have to battle, if we want to talk battle, is climate change. And because right now, or at least earlier this week, in the Southwest, Texas, etc., hurricanes again, people being displaced. We talk about people being displaced in the Middle East. People are being displaced all over the world. But what we know is that these tornadoes, these hurricanes, are really displacing people and causing major issues. And we just have to think about what we intend to do. The Environmental Protection Agency will be under attack. I urge people to read Project 2024. It's what the Republicans say they'll do if Trump is elected. It lays out all the agencies they would shut down, everything that they would cut, and that includes education and the environment. So consumer protection, you go down the list. It's about a 900-page document that's full of warnings for us. Inflation. Let me talk about inflation for a moment, because and this is very sensitive, because President Biden can't do anything to the Fed. The Fed is an independent agency, so he can't tell them what to do. I mean, he can hint, but Jerome Powell has said that they're going to keep the federal open market rate, which is what banks borrow money from. That's 5.5%, between 5.3 and 5.5. And Powell has said that he's going to keep that number where it is. It's been that way for June of 2023. It's the highest rate that we've experienced in a very long time. And he says that's where it's going to be until he sees inflation abating. Inflation is not abating. Inflation is alive and well. It's at about between 3.2 and 3.5%. That's high. The Fed shoots for a target of about 2%. So until inflation is down, the federal funds rate will be up, which means what? If you try to buy a house right now, it's going to be more expensive. If you try to buy a car, it's going to be more expensive. If you have credit card debt, your interest rate may go up. So this is the consequence. The problem here is that this is not Biden's fault, but it's going to show up on the polls. When I talk to people, they don't really care about a bunch of stuff, but they care about inflation because that hits them in their pocketbook. They don't care if Trump had an affair with an adult film star. They don't care, frankly, they don't care. Many of them don't care whether President Biden has done things to help the United Negro College Fund or Black HBCUs. They care about what happens in their pocketbook today. You go to the store today and something is more expensive than it was last week, you care. And who are you going to blame? You're going to blame President Biden. So this is a problem. Now, of course, I can't let this go today without talking about Michael Cohen and the Orange Man. And he's been testifying up a storm, and he makes the former president look as guilty as all hell. But who cares? If they have one juror, they can hang the jury, and there will be no consequences. He will be tarred, but not feathered. So Cohen is doing his damage, but he's only been on direct examination as of Tuesday. The rest of the week, they'll be doing cross-examination, which I'm sure will damage him utterly. Moving across the bay, we're in Washington, over to Baltimore, where the Key Bridge has been demolished, and they're talking about rebuilding. There are two issues. One is the renaming. I talked about it last week. Will they still keep it after Francis Scott Key, or will they name it after someone else? That's number one. So what's number two? Who's going to be rebuilding this bridge? Baltimore is a heavily Black city. Will Black workers have an opportunity to rebuild this bridge? I sure hope so, but you never know. So we want to keep a lookout on that and say, let us rebuild our own city. And then let me talk for just a minute about Reverend William Barber. I had the privilege of interviewing him last week, and he is, of course, the giant, in my opinion. He's going to be gathering people on June 29th in Washington for his march, his march. And basically, it's a Poor People's Campaign 2.0. He claimed that some years ago, and he's continued with it. He's got people from 36 states being represented, including the District of Columbia. I'm excited for this work and hope people will Google poorpeoplescampaign.org, and if you're so moved, join it. But he is doing the work. I mean, he is seriously doing the work. We don't have very many. We have Reverend Jackson, who is not able these days to be as out there as he was, and so praise to Reverend Barber. Now, we don't know what's going to happen because we're recording on Tuesday, but we know that there's a scrappy fight for United States Senate in Maryland, with Angela Also Brooks standing up to the billionaire bully David Trone. Whoever wins will be taking on former Governor Larry Hogan. But that's not the only Senate news we have. New Jersey Senator Bob Melendez, the jury for his trial for corruption, bribe, et cetera, is being selected on Tuesday, Wednesday of last week. And we don't know what's going to happen. There is a Democrat who's running, likely to win, a young Asian brother. So we're excited about that. But the United States Senate, frankly, is up for play. Lots of people who are looking at corruption are wondering if this is a Democratic thing. Well, we know it isn't, but we know that our elected officials just have to do better by us. Now, I don't know how much more time I have, but let me go to a pleasant note. The WNBA season kicked off on Tuesday. I'm looking forward to seeing Angel Reese and some of the other sisters in action. I hope that one or two of them get to get to Caitlin and perhaps put her back in her place. That's all I have to say about that. So it's been, like I said, it's been a busy week. As always, we could go on and on and on. But those are my highlights. Yeah, those are my highlights.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Julian. We appreciate you. We'll talk back to you next week. All righty.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Now we're going to go to our commercial break, and we'll be back in a moment.
For my care coach at AmeriHealth, I probably wouldn't be so healthy right now. As a man, we don't get checkups or see a doctor regularly anyways. It's probably just a man thing because none of my partners go either. We know we should, but we just don't, and hope it works out.
So what changed for you?
AmeriHealth assigned me a care coach, somebody that gives one-on-one help, answer questions, explain things, and help set my appointments. She also helped me understand what having high blood pressure really means and ways to manage it so it doesn't kill me. It ain't nothing to play with. If you're a member of AmeriHealth, ask for a care coach. I'm glad I got mine.
At AmeriHealth, if you need a care coach, you can have one. Just call us at 1-877-759-6224 to get connected. 1-877-759-6224. This program is funded in part by the government of the District of Columbia Department of Healthcare Finance. Mayor Muriel Bowser.
Washington Informer religion columnist Lyndia Grant.
Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a segregated Montgomery bus. In lectures on brotherhood, Ms. Parks often said, "People always say that I didn't give up my seat because I was tired." But that wasn't true. I was not tired physically. I was not old. I was 42. No, the only tired I was tired of giving in. Driven out of Montgomery by harassment and death threats, Detroit, Michigan became her new home. Rosa Parks will always be remembered as the mother of the civil rights movement. Raised in the AME church, she once said, "I remember finding such comfort and peace while reading the Bible."
Read more in the religion column of the Washington Informer, an award-winning African-American newspaper. We don't report crime or gossip, just positive news. Pick up the Washington Informer or visit us online at washingtoninformer.com. Call 202-561-4100 for more information.
This is Frank Smith with the African American Civil War Museum in Washington, D.C., located at 1925 Vermont Avenue Northwest on the Green Line. Did you know that a recent study found that children who visit museums do better in school and in life than children who do not? So parents, teachers, and preachers, let's get moving. I promise you, if you bring your children to the African American Civil War Museum, they will be inspired by the images that they see. They will be impressed by our living history reenactors who are always available, and they will be involved in our scavenger hunt that takes them throughout our exhibit. That's the African American Civil War Museum, 1925 Vermont Avenue. Our hours are 10 to 6:30 on weekdays, 12 to 4 on Saturdays and Sundays. See it. Be inspired.
And we are back now for our second guest. Today we're going to be talking with former D.C. Councilman Frank Smith, who is the founder of the African American Civil War Memorial and Museum, but he served the citizens of the District of Columbia for more than 20 years as a councilman and on the school board, Board of Education. He's also one of the original SNCC team, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. I always like to say that because when I worked for him, I worked for the African American Civil War Memorial, but we also took SNCC trips and took the kids to nonviolent programs. So I enjoyed that. I got a chance to see what it was like.
Yep.
So for those young people who are out there listening and you don't know what SNCC is, it is the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. They all worked with Dr. Martin Luther King. They organized back in the 60s and the 70s. This is a team that worked towards voting rights and other civil rights matters. They worked with Dr. Martin Luther King and his team, Reverend Jesse Jackson and all the other legends. And Councilman Frank Smith is one of the last few living, him and Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton. So we're going to be talking to him today about Memorial Day. It's a couple of weeks off, but I wanted to be sure and get him in before Memorial Day because they always have, I believe Memorial Day is when all the motorcycles show up.
That's right.
Dr. Smith, talk to us today. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much, Lyndia. You know, it's always good to be on your show. You and I have worked together for so many years now, probably 40 years, I guess.
Yes, including Georgia Avenue Day, exactly. Yes.
That's right. And every once in a while, one of those young people that was at Garnett Patterson with us went to California with us to see Denzel Washington and cast from the movie Glory. Every once in a while, one of them would walk by the African American Civil War Museum, and I hardly recognize them. They say, Mr. Smith, I was one of the people that went with you. And it's so good to see them. They bring back such good memories. But you know, last weekend I was back in Holly Springs, Mississippi, which was the first place that I went to as a civil rights worker. I'd been at Morehouse College for 3 years, in the civil rights movement at Morehouse, and then after 3 years I decided to join with SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. They recruited about 30 or 40 of us to go full-time into Mississippi. You know, the idea was that you could change Atlanta, you can change Georgia. If you change Mississippi, you can change America. In other words, you can't change America until you change Mississippi. And so we had to go into the belly of the whale in the land of Emmett Till and all those horrible memories that we had of people being lynched. But we had to go there because the local people wanted us to come help them throw off those chains of those shackles of slavery and all that segregation. So I went over there. Last weekend, I went back for the 60th anniversary of the class at Rusk College, the class of 1964. And it was like going back in time to see these young people. These were the first people I worked with in Mississippi. And it was in that little town that I met a man named Henry Reeves, who had his grandfather's rifle and he had his grandfather's uniform, a black man who told me about his granddad who had fought in the Civil War for freedom. And I was just so shocked. I had never heard anything about that before. And it took me a long time to get it all digested, man, here and come to Washington and find people like you so we can do something about it.
Yes, I'm telling you. So it's been, I don't know how many years now, so it's probably more than 25 for the monument was unveiled in 98. I can't add that quick.
Yeah.
But talk to us about tell us two things I want the people to know. One, you got a new museum coming, and then we also got programs that you do on Memorial Day. So whichever one you want to do first.
Well, let's start with the museum first, because you know on the 1st of February we got international recognition from the Guinness Book of World Records. You know, we started out talking about this, Lyndia. You and I were discovering as we went. We didn't know much about these soldiers until we went to the Library of Congress. Started digging through all them files. Had these kids down there writing on 3x5 cards, bringing them back home. We couldn't hardly read them. Couldn't even read our own writing. We had put so many of them down there by the time we got home. But we were discovering stuff that the nation didn't know. And we finally got some international recognition for these soldiers. We have 209,000 names at the African American Civil War Memorial at 10th U Street. if you come out there now, you'll see a big sign that says "Recognized by the Guinness Book of World Records." As
Oh, good. Okay.
More names than any other monument in the world.
That's
more
right.
than any other monument in the world. And our goal was to put something up here that people couldn't see anywhere else. And now we can say without any doubt that you can't see this anywhere but at 10th and U Street at the African American Civil War Memorial. And so I'm happy to report that today as we come up on Memorial Day. But we have various ways of celebrating. You're right, on Sunday morning, the Buffalo Thunder. They call themselves, these are motorcycle riders. They call themselves Buffalo Thunder because they sound like Buffalo Thunder when they're coming down the road. 800 of them are going to come to U Street for a little ceremony that we've done now for the last 10 or 12 years. We invite the public to come out and join us at 10 a.m. on Sunday morning, to come out and join us so we can all celebrate together the Memorial Day weekend. And I'm going to put this date up here in a minute so you can see it. It's Memorial Day.
The 19th.
No. It's the next weekend.
Okay.
It's Sunday. We're going to be at the museum on Sunday, May the 26th. That's right.
Okay.
Sunday the 26th. Monday the 27th is the official holiday.
Okay.
So it's always the last Sunday in the month. So we'll be at 10 o'clock in the morning at the African American Civil War. You want to see a bunch of motorcycle riders? They all dress up, and you know what else they do? They bring a little contribution every year. These guys.
Oh, good.
They ride for fun. They ride for a purpose also. One of the purposes is to come every year to bring a donation to the African American Civil War Memorial Museum to let us know that they still care about us. They still love us, and they want us to keep up the good work. And so we're going to be celebrating with them. And then on Monday, the 29th, we'll have a ceremony at the memorial itself. Just our little team to come out there. We'll read some items from this. The government created a special Bureau of U.S. Colored Troops, and we're going to talk about those for part of our Memorial Day program. So we're meant to public to join us.
And lay a wreath like you always do.
Yeah, you know that. We got to lay a wreath for the soldiers. And if you haven't been out here before, for many of these soldiers, some of these men were buried in common graves. For many of them, they were buried after they got out of the war. Only about 30% of them got killed. 70% of them came home. And they lived, some of them lived to be 70, 80, 90 years old. They built churches and schools, and they're buried at some of these church cemeteries. They're buried at some of them are buried at the Federal Cemetery, for example, in Vicksburg, Mississippi. Some of them are buried out here at Arlington, in a section of Arlington, Section 23 at Arlington Cemetery. And I chuckle when I say that because y'all know we were segregated in life. We're segregated in death, too. Even at the National Cemetery out here at Arlington, there's a colored section for the United States Colored Troops at Arlington Cemetery, Section 23. So it's well kept now. In the old days, they didn't do much to keep it up, but we've been fussing at them for years. Now they keep it up. It's well kept, and people can enjoy visiting these soldiers. But some of these guys are buried in unmarked graves, and people don't know. You know, this is the only place where they actually are memorialized is at our monument on our walls. And you and I didn't notice when we were getting started that what we were building was going to be something sort of like a headstone. This soldier's name up there in his regiment in alphabetical order with all his buddies that were in that regiment with him. And some of them died. Some of them got sick. Some of them lived with injuries for the rest of their lives. But they all did a favor for this country. They fought to end slavery and keep America united under one flag.
Amen. And I'm so glad about that. So, and I'm happy too. Every time I pass by it, I get filled with pride knowing how we were there when it was nothing but groundbreaking. It was an idea you had. You had said, let's sit down and talk about a monument I want to do. I didn't know nothing about it. So I didn't know what he was talking about to some black soldiers who fought in the Civil War. I didn't know nothing about it. So I'm just happy that I was open, and this has just been a blessing. And
God gave us these good brains. We have to use these brains that the Lord gave us.
Yes,
and we don't. We have to be. And it's true for all young people today. If you have an idea, stick by it. Don't ever give up on it.
That's
because,
right.
Someday you might get a chance to do something about it. And when
Now
you do, you want to be ready.
And tell us, before we run out of time, we only got a couple more minutes, about the museum. I know it's going to be some delays, but tell us in a couple of minutes what's going on.
So we used to be, the public will remember that we used to be in the gymnasium of the Grimke building right there on U Street, 1925 Vermont Avenue, Northwest, at Vermont and U Street. Then we partnered with somebody and bought the building, and now the main building, and we're expanding the museum, 15,000 square feet of new displays, a brand new exhibit called From Slavery to the White House about First Lady Michelle Obama. It has been delayed now for a couple of years, and then, COVID came along and what they call supply line distribution problems and all that stuff, and it made the price go up. But you and I don't give up. We don't give in. We don't give out. We won't quit till we get this thing done.
That's right.
And we now are in the middle of the work now. It'll probably take us about 6 or 8 more months. And then we'll have a grand reopening. And Lyndia, this is one of the things that you and I have to work on together. You know how to help put on these grand events.
Yes, I do.
We're gonna have a grand reopening, and you're gonna have to help us out with that grand reopening.
Yes, indeed. Looking forward to it. So maybe before Christmas, you think?
Well, it's gonna be early spring. Let's give ourselves plenty of time.
All the way till next year. Okay.
Yeah, it's gonna be early spring 2025. We got to get this thing right.
And it'll give us time to do what we need. Hopefully, get somebody like Denzel to come.
Absolutely. And I've got a committee. This time we expanded a little bit. I got a committee of 100. They're trying to expand it now to a committee of 143. And you know what that 143 is for. That's that General Order 143 that creates the Bureau of U.S. Colored Troops. So we're putting together that committee to help you and I, and we have a bunch of people working on this now. And we're going to take our time, and because we are expanding it and we're doing some great stuff. And it'll be the spring of next year. We'll give us plenty of time to get ourselves, to get the house in order.
And then
get ready for a grand reopening.
And what about the Monument of Lincoln? Is that going to go first still, or what's going to happen?
Yeah, that's going to go first. We're going to try to get Lincoln up there in February.
Okay.
Because that's his birthday. He and Frederick Douglass' birthday are right there together in February. And so we'll call it Lincoln Douglas Day and get that thing up get that one up first. And then later on will come the opening of the new museum itself.
All right. Well, I think that does it for our show today. Dr. Smith, we thank you so much. That gave the people something to look forward to. And we thank you for being our guest for Memorial Day.
All right, Lyndia. Thank you very much for your service, too.
All right. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Read my column in the Washington Informer newspaper. We've been writing that column for 20 years now, and it's syndicated all over the country. Tune in again next week for another special guest. And during the month of June, we're going to have special guests every month. We'll be celebrating our 15 years being on Radio 1. Words, thoughts, and deeds have a boomerang effect. So be careful what you send out. We do become what we think about. And Scripture says it this way: my people perish for the lack of knowledge. So think on these things. From the Lyndia Grant Show, I'm your host, Lyndia Grant. Until next week, good day.
Thank you for listening to the Lyndia Grant Show. Think on these things with your host, Lyndia Grant.